Hey, welcome to the Trick Taking Table. I'm Saint Trick, and here we are at day 8 of the 12 days of Trickmas. We are on peppermint and licorice. Interesting combination. And it's 8 maids of milking. I think that's maybe the only theme I can extrapolate from the games we're covering today is that it's a pair of people, like a maid milking a cow. You know, you need 2 to tango. So I thought, rowdy partners? You know, also, there could be, there's a donkey in the game. There could be a cow in there getting milked. Can you milk a donkey? Can you milk a cat, Greg? Then also, Colt. And actually, I did realize these are pair of design teams. So both these games are designed by 2 people. So that's also kind of like a maid milking it, like a couple. I should stop talking. Okay, off to the Hall of Hooks to talk about these 2 games. Hey, welcome to the Hall of Hooks, and look at this. The stocking's perfectly holding up without any support the copy of Rowdy Partners. Because, you know, it didn't need any support. If there wasn't any support there, it wouldn't just rip off the hook like it maybe did earlier when I was trying to try this. Anyway, talking about games, let's just pick Rowdy Partners first. Why not randomly? The hook to Rowdy Partners, designed by Jason Hager and Darren Reckner, is you can play this at different player counts. In fact, you can play it 2 to 4, but mainly Rowdy Partners is, in my mind, a 2v2 game where you are 2 pairs of wrestlers, and you can actually like mix and match the wrestlers. Like as you can see in the back here, you have Dynamite, and Lawman, and what you do is they're 2 boards, and they actually combine to make kind of like, you know, wrestling mask. They stitch up to make a kind of path here, and every time you are playing these symbols, you're actually moving up this path and getting bonuses. And bonuses are like tokens that let you change your rank or change your suit or do various and sundry things, but also tag team, because a big hook of the game is you are wrestling. You are wrestling, tag team wrestling, fighting each other. And if you're familiar with tag team wrestling, there's always someone in the ring. So that someone in the ring is going to be losing health, more and more health every time they get, if they're in the ring and the other team wins a trick, you're going to look at the lowest rank in that trick, and that's how much health they lose. So oof but goof. So you're losing those health, and the game ends when one of the wrestlers gets, I think, knocked out. It shows a skull, so I hope they don't die. But anyway, that's the hook. You're fighting back and forth. At 2 players and 3 players, there's different systems with like a big bad wrestler that you're fighting. But anywho, that is the hook to Rowdy Partners. Partnership, trick taking. Also, when you play the same number, you'll like cancel out that previously played number, and so sometimes the trick will only have like 2 cards in it or something, or sometimes 0 cards in it. And then Colt, I know it's pronounced Colt, but Colt is designed by the design team, like I was saying, Ash Hanschild and Taylor Fontaine. And the hook to this one is you will be playing trick taking like normal, except the winner of the trick is going to draft from the cards in the trick, and what you're drafting on is half to build your hand for next round. So it's kind of like you're building your hand as you play the tricks in the previous round, but also you're going to choose what you want to potentially score. And what you're scoring on is both what you're picking for your next hand. So your next hand is both your next hand and kind of scoring. Also, what you're picking to score is the system where the lowest ones score more readily than the higher ones, but that actually removes cards from the deck. So later on in later rounds, there are certain cards removed from the deck. That's pretty much it. There's also some other finagling, interesting hooks. One hook is if you're off suit but play the same rank as the first card, the lead card in the trick, you actually trump in, which is also slick, new, maybe something I haven't seen. Probably not, but that is Hulk. That is Colt, Gravolt, and Rowdy Partners. Let's go to the table and show you how these play. The deck for Rowdy Partners is 4 suits, numbered 1 through 8, but there's also a wild suit that's a little bit shorter, from 3 to 6. That's any of those 4 suits. Here we have a game of Rowdy Partners set up for 4 players. I'm not going to cover the 2 and 3, but they do have options for that. How the 4-player works is each player is going to get a character like Dynamite, or Thunder, or Lawman, or Amazing Grace. They're going to sit next to their partner, and then they're going to move their board here, which looks like the stitching of like a mask, together to form this track of sorts that's going to give them bonuses and boosts. Also, players are going to have a health marker or kind of a track here, and they're going to get their health marker, put it on the 10 spot for each, and then also take this white marker and put it at the bottom of this stitch track. Next, you're going to shuffle the deck, deal 8 cards to each player. There's going to be 4 cards cut. You're just going to put them face down for the round. Next, you're going to set up the ring, and each team is going to put whoever they are, the hexagonal token, into this slot here. It's like a dual layered, looks like kind of a wrench, but a little piece that is going to flip and swap in the game. You're going to set it up so one player is going to be first, that's the 1, and then they're facing off against the other team, and there's one player on the other team that's going to be second, and then the other players, as you can see, are 3rd and 4th. And that's when they'll play into the trick, and this is where they will play, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Finally, you're going to set up all of the pop tokens over here. The green ones should be flipped face down. They have green on one side and something special on the other, and then they're going to be shuffled because those are a mystery. So leading off into the first trick is Thunder, because they are in position 1. Let's just say they started off with a 2 green. It is must follow, so the player in the next spot, number 2, which is Lawman, is going to have to look at their hand and play a green if they have one. So it looks like they definitely have some green, but they also have a wild. You can always play a wild if you want, and that would act as the lead suit, but they're not going to for now. They're just going to follow suit with a green. Whenever you play a card that has one of these arrows on it, that is a pop arrow, and you're going to move it up for the number of arrows. So certain cards have maybe 2 arrows on them, like this 8 here, if you can see. But so you're going to move up on the mask for your team the number of arrows. So since it was the Lawman who played it, they're going to move up once. So then it's going to go to number 3, and that is Amazing Grace. Again, they're going to have to follow suit. They don't have any wilds, so they're going to have to play one of these 2 cards. Maybe they play the 7, so that's going to move up 1 more. And whenever you move into or through any of the tokens, because again, if you play like an 8, you move up twice, so you would pass over 2 spots, you are going to get that token. And so sometimes they're just the pop tokens over here, like that 1 up there, or maybe this handshake. But this one is a special token for Amazing Grace. They get their kind of little tombstone token, which is Mercy and Damnation. That is going to modify your card by either +2 or -2. I believe the token you use is this big token that they have in the game that matches the symbol. So we're going to give them to that team up there, so you can play that on your turn, and you can never play a token that you get on your turn. So for example here, when they played the 7 and it moved up into that tombstone spot, they couldn't then use this to make it a 5 or a 9 or whatever they wanted to do. They just got it that turn. So then finally now you're coming to the player in the 4th spot. That is Dynamite. They're going to play into the trick. Let's say they just decide to play this 1. So the winner of the trick is whoever actually plays the lowest. So it's going to be Dynamite here because they play the 1 of the lead suit. But interestingly enough, whoever is in the ring on the other team, the opponent team, is going to take that amount of damage equal to the rank. So since it's a 1, it's only 1 damage, but it's going to go to whoever's in the center here, which is Lawman. So they're going to take 1 damage. They're going to move it down on the track. And then whoever wins actually becomes the next leader, who's going to be the first spot. So you have to validate, or you have to swap over here to make that work. So since it was Dynamite who won, you're going to have to take this here and flip it. Boop, 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 boop. So now Dynamite is in first position, and now they are actually in the ring. Then you're going to clean up the trick, and whoever's in the first spot is going to lead into the next trick. So Dynamite led a 3 green, and coming to the Lawman up here, they could follow suit with a green, but they're going to actually play this 3 wild just to show off part of the game. Whenever you play the same rank as any previously played card, you're going to flip both your played card and the card that matches your rank. You do still get to move up, so like let's say you play like an 8 or a 7 with one of those pop tokens, you would move up on your pop track before you flip your card. But so how the flipping works is they played a 3, same rank as this one, they played a 3, so now those both flip. So now when it comes to the next player, so 3, their partner, Amazing Grace, they can play whatever they want because no card is lead. There's no lead suit. So even though it started off as maybe green, now Amazing Grace can play a 3 yellow. And if they wanted to, they could modify their card to being like a 1 or a 5, but they're not going to do it for now. Playing the 4th is Thunder, and looking at their hand, they actually don't have any yellow. They have some wilds, but they're not that low, so maybe they'll just play one of these other cards. Let's say they play the 2 red. It's always the lowest of the lead suit, so this 2 actually doesn't win it. It is the 3 yellow from Amazing Grace. So they are going to hit whoever is in the ring for the other team. That's Dynamite for 3. So that's 1, 2, 3. And then now, Amazing Grace is going to lead, so you're going to have to flip them into first place. So flip them in and move them. So now they're in first, and then this slides up for the other team. If that was countered, like let's say Thunder played a 3 red and it was just wiped, that would just wipe the trick, and then the person who is in first would then lead again. So flow like this is going to continue until someone's health track gets to this skull here, and then if it ever does to either of the wrestlers, the other team wins. That'll usually happen after players are out of cards. So actually when they're out of cards, you're going to shuffle, re-deal, and then keep playing. But how the health track works is this is all normal, la 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 la, as you lose health. But once you get to a stop sign, you actually stop right away. So if this Dynamite player was right here when they just took 3, they would go 1, 2, and then they would stop. As you can see on this stop track, there's a bunch of stops before you hit the skull. That's like being on the ropes. So if you ever took any amount of damage from here, if you took 1 or more damage, you would move 1 more stop. And then if you're here, you actually have to take at least 2 or more damage to move again. If Dynamite was in here and they only got hit with a 1, they wouldn't move at all. And this is, I guess, to simulate being on the ropes and having kind of like one last breath. But so let's say they took 8 damage, they would move just 1 more. And then over here, again, they need 3+ to get into the end here. And at this point, Thunder probably should swap out from the ring for Dynamite because they have life. But to continue this example, if they took 1 or 2 damage, they wouldn't move there. But if they took 3 or more, they would knock that, and that would be the end of the game, and the other team would win. And that's pretty much how to play the game. I didn't explain some of these pop tokens. So as you can see here, there's this one, which is plus or minus 1. You would get that if going over here. And Thunder could have used that on this, where if they played, it had this pop token, that could have been a 3. Those both would have flipped so that Dynamite wouldn't have taken that 3 damage. This one right here lets you swap places. So maybe Dynamite was going to die. Maybe they were here, and Thunder could have played this to be able to swap with their teammate, and then they would have taken the 3 damage. The next one is extra damage. So if you put that on there, that would do 4 damage. And then finally you have a bunch of mystery ones where if you get them, you could look at them, but you don't have to reveal what they are until you play them. So that's like a -2. So this could go down to, a 1 and then doing an extra damage. So that's pretty much how to play Rowdy Partners. You can have a bunch of mix and matched different types of characters, like, it could be the Dynamite Lawman or whatever that is, and players have different amount of tracks. You kind of build the track together with your partner, but that is how to play 4 players. Definitely check the rules for how to play 2 and 3, but for the most part, that's how to play. The deck in Cult is 4 suits numbered 1 through 16, but you're going to have different amount of cards at different player counts. So at 1 to 4, you're going to use them all. At 1 to 3, you're going to take out 13 through 16 in each suit, and then at 2, you're going to take out the 9 through 16 in each suit. Here we have a game of Cult set up for 2 players. So no matter the player count, you're going to put these cards up here. We're going to kind of move them off to the side because they're for scoring, which we'll do later. Then you're going to shuffle the deck. You're going to deal 8 cards to each player. That deck will be different depending on the player count. Then also depending on the player count, you're going to deal out 2 more than the number of players of these cards, which give bonuses to the scoring. And then each player is going to get a little card to separate both their scoring cards and their dreams, which are their cards for the next round. And then finally, the start player is going to get these little laurel, and that is going to let them know that they're the start player. So starting off with the start player, you're going to play 8 tricks. And so it is must follow, maybe this player leads with that. It is must follow, so maybe this player does this. So starting with the player who wins and then going clockwise, you are going to draft a card, and you're going to either put it into your hand for later. That means going on the bottom here. This is called the dreams, or you could put it up here to score. So coming to this player here, maybe they want to score this one, they'll put it up top. So flow like this is going to continue. It's always highest of the lead suit, except if, so let's just do another trick here. This player wins this one. They choose to score that one as well. This maybe player chooses to score this one. If this player over here leads with, maybe later on down the line, a red card, and if Jingle Bells has no red card, if you ever play the same rank as the very first card that was led into the trick, you actually trump in and win the trick. So usually offsuit does not win unless it's, again, the same rank as the lead. And in a multiplayer game, or 3 or more, if multiple people do that, or short suit and they do that, it's later played. But so in this example, the tree actually will win this trick and can choose what to take first, and then the other player does that. So you can only have 4 cards for later in your dreams, and 4 cards scored. And if you ever were to have a full amount, like this player already has 4 cards for later, if they ever, you know, are drafting from a trick, maybe this was the trick, this player took this one, and this player has to take this one, they have to score it because they're full down here. So if you're ever full in one area, you have to go to the other spot. So a flow like this is going to continue for the 8 tricks, and at the very end, players are going to have 4 up top that they are going to score, and then 4 down below in their dreams. So now for the scoring, players are going to look at each suit, and that's what these are, and they're going to score the cards that were above in their area. And usually there's more table space, so this could be off to the side, but we'll pull it down here for now. So you're going to go by suits. You're going to look at the win suit, and you're going to score the win suit. And how that works is you're going to look out, and you're going to take the lowest number from everyone and add it to the column. And if it is the lowest number, meaning 1, it will score its rank. So this right here would have scored, but since there's no 1 out here, it does not score. Similarly, the 3 does not score, and the 7 does not score. Next, you would do green, and since green goes, the 3 goes here, but the 2 and the 1 aren't there, so that doesn't score. The 5 goes here, but the 4, 2 and the 1 aren't there, so the 5 doesn't score. Let me move something around. So, because this also would go 2, then 3, then 4, and their 1 wasn't there, so none of these score. Let me move this around a little bit. So let's say these also were about to score. Again, these are the cards that are in players' hands, so we're not going to do it. But so let's do that. So the 1 will go down. It is the lowest card, so that scores 1 point for the golden tree. Then the 2 will come down, and since the 1 was here, that scores 2 points for the cup of water. And then the 3 comes over, and boom, 3 points for the golden tree. So the tree got 4 for the 3 and the 1, and then the cup of water got 2 for the 2. So, unfortunately, all the scoring for this round was null and void because there wasn't any 1s, but those cards that were up there are actually going to stay there for the rest of the game. So these cards are now out of the game for the whole game, and they are now going to allow for later scoring opportunities. Before you actually get dealt hands and redo another round, you're actually going to score these. How can I forget? So how this works is players are going to look all into their dreams, and they're going to score whatever is in their dreams if it satisfies this. So this is most water cards. They are tied. So if it's tied, players will share ties. So both those players will score all the full points. And at 2 players, it's 4 points for every one of these. At 3, it's 6, and at 4, it is 8 points. So both players got the most water cards in their dreams, so they both get 4 points. Whoop. Most even cards in their dreams. This player over here has 3. This player over here only has 1. So the water cup would get 4 points for that. Whoop. And then finally, lowest total. This is 19, and over here is 19. What? Wow, wild. They shared that one again. Interesting. And finally, this one actually was during the trick play, I should have mentioned. So if it doesn't say in dreams, meaning whatever you're going to save for next round, it will have usually a kind of task for players to do. So this says, win a trick with a 2 card. So if during the trick, maybe this player led the 2 and the other player was off suit and couldn't win, and they won with a 2, they will move this in front of them, and that's going to stay there unless someone else does it later. And if another person does it later, it's going to move in front of them, and whoever has this in front of them is going to score 4 points. So it's technically win a trick with a value 2 last, most recently. So if you actually do it earlier and someone does it later, you actually don't get the points. So that's how that works. So then yeah, for second round, you are going to do, like I said, get 4 new cards, get the 4 cards that you had to your dreams, and then you are going to play another round. You're going to get new ones of these. And then the lead player for the second round is whoever won the last trick. Maybe it was this player over here. And then you're going to do that for 3 total rounds. And that's how to play Cavolt.
So that is Rowdy Partners, Cavolt, and I'm drinking peppermint licorice. We'll see how it goes. I just put it in. It's a little bit hot, so maybe I'll try it at the end. Before I go into final thoughts, I should say, I forgot to mention at the top, I was provided this copy by Longtail, so huge grain of salt. And also, I was provided this copy of Rowdy Partners by the publisher Capstone Games, so huge, huge, huge grains of salt. But let's first chat about Cult. Oh, it is an interesting one. I like how the scoring works, and it uses a trumping system that I don't think I've ever seen, and I think it's pretty clever that you play off the person's who leads first rank to be able to trump in. So it doesn't happen too much, but the option's there. So a little bit of whimsy, a little bit of surprise, and the scoring is a cool idea. I think at higher player counts, where there's more cards in, there's higher ranked cards in, it becomes a little swingy. And I think that actually indicates a little bit of how I feel about playing this game. I prefer personally to play it at 2 players. And there's a few reasons. One is I don't love that it's such an important kind of like drafting game that the person who wins the trick starts and then it goes clockwise. So it just feels like if you're to the left of the person who wins, even if you did poorly or whatever in that trick, you get a draft second. I never liked that. And so at 2 players, there isn't that issue to me. So I love that. And then also at 2 players, it's 1 to 8, I believe. And so you get the higher chance of when you're scoring for something to work out. And also there's like zero sums, or like whatever you cut, it feels like you're focusing on the other player, as opposed to like sometimes you can just cut a card and it feels kind of a little more take that when it's like, oh, randomly that person over there, I'm gonna like cut that card so that it doesn't score. And I saw you were going for it. I do think also finally at 2 players there's less of like the deck is just like, because so much is cut out at 3 and 4 from the deck at the start, because you have, you know, to facilitate dealing 4 cards to each person every round. That I like it more at 2 because there's less cut from the deck and you get a little bit more of a standard trick taker sooner. Like I know that it eventually does kind of all go out at 3 and 4 players, but I think you hit that moment of a good kind of like what's out of the deck at 2 players better. And then also I think if you're familiar with what we've covered on the channel, like 2-player trick taking, you kind of enjoy having more cut from the deck, because since it is so zero sum, since there's only 2 hands out, that you kind of don't mind having more cut. Whereas at like 3 or 4, when there's a bunch cut and there's more players at the table, you're like, I don't know kind of what's going on. But overall, I really like the chumping system, like I said, and again at 2 I think it shines. I like how the scoring works, is super clever. And to the kind of flipped face-up scoring, again, I just like it more at 2 when you're really paying attention to what someone pulls into their dreams and what you pull into your dreams. I think when there's more than 2 players, it's hard to kind of keep track. So yeah, I think it's a cool idea and flow, and I really like the production. I like the graphic design a lot. There's something really modern and cool about it personally. But I would recommend this more at 2 than at 3 or 4. I felt like there was too much to track, too much cut out, and I didn't love doing maybe second best in the trick, but I like drafting 4th sometimes at 4 or 3. I wish I could play solo. There was some solo puzzles in the rulebook, but when I went to the link, I couldn't quite find them. I'm curious if that'd be good. But that is Colt, I think. Good time at 2, and but at 3 or 4, not quite my favorite, but really cool stuff. On to Rowdy Partners. Woo! Chunker of a game. Very wild game. A lot of what I like about a trick-taking game is hard to apply to this because it is just so goofy, so silly. Like, I think the mood you have to be in to really enjoy this game is more silly, is more goofy. And I think when you're in that mindset, it is a fun time. There's like these tokens that you're like, I'm on the ropes, and then I place this token and I swap, and then this person comes in and hits you with a big blast, and then they play their thing. And so I think there's room for like silly vibes, silly card play. I also really like the idea that like one player's on the hook for getting hit, and it's the lowest that wins, and it does damage, so that's like a really nice system that makes sense. Also, if you play the same rank, kind of similar to, I think it might be the same designers, Fuego that we covered, there's some similar rank stuff, which is always fun because I think that handles the being offsuit well, like you feel like you're still a part of it. It's cool to be able to play second and flip the rank of the person who was leading, who won the last trick, and then make it to where your partner, team game, leads off what is the led suit. Or if you play third and you flip over the first, and then the person, your partner, who was second, then actually is the one who led the trick. Really cool stuff. I think I've always looked for fun new ways to feel like a partnership game, and that definitely does. Also, combining your mass and seeing how your track works and playing off of that and keeping that in mind. Like, I played once where my track and the other player's track really just gave us +1, -1s. And that's kind of like all it did. Whereas I played times, so maybe that's one of the negatives. Sometimes some matchups are terribly fun, or sometimes also you'll make wonderful mixes where like some person is really good at tag teaming, some person is really good at damage, and you kind of bounce off each other in really fun ways. I will say, so again, like this criticism doesn't quite fit with that mindset of just like being goofy. You will play, I think, a few hands before it gets kind of like serious in the game, the on the ropes thing. And it does kind of feel, just because you can swap who's in the ring, who's taking damage, and you can kind of bounce around a lot in the game, that the game kind of almost doesn't 100% matter until you get to like on the ropes. I was hoping for big moments where it was like, oh, the lowest number is how much damage, and you can flip, so what could happen if you get like a huge hit? And there's so much kind of mitigation in players playing, or maybe it's just the players I played with playing smartly, that there never was like giant hits. But again, maybe that could happen with certain folks. But I think the biggest part of the game is like first rounds, you're kind of just whittling down to like everyone's kind of on their stop, and then it starts to get very like tense back and forth, which feels like a Rowdy Partners match. I almost wish the game kind of started there. I feel like it's almost 3 or maybe even 4 hands for like 3 or 4 hands sake. Yeah, I don't know. I think I felt like I was just kind of going through the paces until we got to the stops. Maybe that's just me. And it didn't feel tense until then, but it's fun. Like if you get into the vibe and you're like, oh, we're bouncing off this, or moving around this, move around this. And I will say also, it's a little bit fiddly to every trick have to, not every time, but move things around or flip and move things around. There's just a lot kind of going on. I will say, really cool that you are, if you're first, you're separated from your partner, and if you're second or third, you're actually together. You play back to back, which is really fun for like thematic reasons, you know, that like that tag team wrestling feel where like one player who just won, who's doing well, is kind of pulled apart, but then their other partner can like come in at the end. And there's something fun in a trick-taking game where you're technically like sitting next to your partner. That doesn't happen too often. Usually it's across from your partner. So it feels very bombastic, wild. There's like really wild stuff that can happen. Overall, using the pop tokens is fun. I like that. And I think it fits the theme of just like bombastic, silly, wild. So if that's what you're looking for, I would definitely recommend it. I think to me, the game is a little long, and I wish it was just the end. I wish it was like the final hand is fun to me, but the lead up to it feels a little like going through the paces. Like the first hand, I'm like, okay, let's just like move around, because you have just so much option to like bow out of the ring. I think what's really fun is when you're both on the ropes in the stops, and like bowing out of the ring isn't like the most useful because you've already split your damage, and you're kind of just like, oh, okay, you take this one, or maybe we're only gonna take 1 damage, so maybe I'll go in because I have 2 stops. And there's like a fun puzzle tension at the end. I just almost wish it was like maybe like a one-hand game where you like start at the stop signs or something. But then again, I think like it's a bigger production. I feel like it needs to almost like, maybe it feels like it needs to be a bigger game than that, so the health kind of starts larger. And to fill up, or to fall through on that promise, which does happen like maybe once or twice, that you could get hit with like a 4, or like a 6, or like an 8. And that, again, with all the stops, like the irony is like those big moments where you do get hit with like an 8 only moves you like 1 spot. So I don't know how to feel where they're like, there's big hits, but when you're in the ropes, those big hits go away. And then sometimes those big hits don't matter too much because you can always like get out of it. So interesting, strange beast, but good times. I think like if you want like a wacky, fun romp, this is definitely going to be up your alley. But I think for like trick-taking sake, you should be aware that like some pretty wild stuff can happen, but it does feel very partnership, which I think fits the bill. Oh, and final note, picking it back up, wonderful art and production, such a vibe, so cool. I don't love the single indexes on Rowdy Partners, but other than that, really great stuff. Love the art, love the vibe, love like the tongue-in-cheekness of the rulebook. Good stuff. Anyway, on to finally peppermint and licorice. We'll see how. That's great stuff. Good stuff. I'll give it a 3. I still think 3 mint is the best, but again, that comes from a mint person. Thanks so much for watching. Ooh, getting closer and closer and closer. I hope these have been fun. All right, bye.